there were so many highs in it, and I mean literal highs of happiness, but there were also so many the lowest points of my life. And
Yeah.
whatever I did, for me, from the age of 16 onwards to 41, when 2007 I stopped using.
Yeah.
I was 17 years on January the 10th.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
good on you.
my life, I think for me, the highest point of any of it was stopping.
Yeah.
That's where the real ecstasy came into play. Because for me, that's the moment that I had clarity again. That was the moment that I could see again. And that was the moment that my life changed for the better. You know, whenever I would, for me, it was always, in the end, was always about the chasing. It was never about the doing.
Right.
I would get high from the phone calls to the dealer at 6 a.m.
Mm.
That was the high bit, chasing it, chasing it, chasing it.
That's very interesting.
I got it in my hand. I used to think, oh, I don't really want to do this because I knew it
Yeah.
wouldn't stop. But for me, it was always about that. Towards the end, it was always about the going and getting.
Wow.
That's where I was high. That was the high point because the drugs no longer worked. They didn't work for me.
I've heard that shared quite a few times, that it was the actual before you took it, that was the big high that you were getting. So
that was it.
So
that was it.
back in 2007, then Tony, you stopped. Why? Why did you stop?
Because I weighed 7 stone. I had no teeth left. I was suicidal on a new drug that I discovered called crystal meth.
Oh, right, yeah.
For me, I'd got to the end of the road, and every day all I thought about was my own funeral. I thought about who was coming and what music was going to be played, and it changed weekly. That was it. That was all I had to look forward to, was dying. There was no choice in it. There was no, oh, I'm going to stop. Oh, I'm going to change my life, because I was too far gone with it.
Yeah, it was always going to be, I was going to do something about it, but it was always going to be done tomorrow.
No, tomorrow never happened.
No.
Tomorrow doesn't happen. It needs to be today. Everything needs to be in the day. And I just think, there are always so many of those moments where I would wake up and think, oh, I'm not doing that. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
An hour later, I'd be out the door because I was powerless. My addiction was far greater than I was. And nothing was going to stop that, because however much I didn't want to do it, I had no choice. I was so far gone in addiction that everything I did was based around addiction. There was no normality anymore. The normality was addiction. I was that street junkie. I was that man you see on a park bench. I was that person walking backwards up the high street. That's who I was. And to come back from that and being homeless and being in a situation where all I had was despair, and that was the highlight. If I was in pain, that gave me a reason to live. Was a mighty hard task to even fathom. And then what happened was, it was like suddenly I was in a club. I was at the Cross, actually, in King's Cross.
Oh, I know very well. Well, it's gone now.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
Not the new shithole they call the Cross.
No, the old one. I shot offshore in part of the offshore video in there.
Yeah. And I was in the green room there, and and then a miracle happened. Someone came in at the right time and said the right thing, and it changed my life forever. Suddenly, that pilot light came back on.
Yeah.
And within 2 days, I got myself to the GP, and then he'd referred me to a drug drop-in centre. And that process started. And then 6 months later, I was in treatment for another 6 months.
Yeah.
That was kind of, from there I went forward.
I just want to track back to something you said a minute ago, Tony, because it something John and I were talking about before we hooked up. Was you were getting a high off actually, the picking up the phone to the dealer, which is really interesting, because we were just talking about the science behind addiction, and so you were getting a dopamine hit in your head before you'd even done it, because you knew.
Of course, it's human nature. We that's how we're wired. Even to go right the way back, we've always hunted. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We're natural born hunters, and the chasing whether it be you get, wanting to go on a date with someone or someone you fancy, you chase. That's what we do. We chase.
Yeah.
And that whole wanting to get the drugs and chasing the drugs and leaving the house to go and meet the dealer and him not turning up for an hour and you standing in a phone box praying and all of that stuff. That's where the high came from. As soon as it was placed in my hand, I'd be like, oh, shit, now I've got to do it.
Yeah.
And I knew once I started doing it, I wouldn't stop.
It's funny you mentioned that, Tony, because I can remember a couple of times when I was doing drugs and I knew what was coming. I can remember throwing up before I hadn't touched anything. I'd throw up.
Of course.
That was that's very similar to you. That was my head.
Yeah, of course. It's anxiety.
Yeah.
It's
really
the adrenaline around the body. And yeah, it's an awful thing because that was what I was paying for. I just, I literally, and I used to get high off that bit, but not off the drugs. There'd be points where 7 a.m. in the morning, I'd be calling the worst dealer in London and knowing full well that their drugs were shit, but I had to have it.
Yeah.
And even if there was like a list of 10 different dealers, the good one was, at the top, always the one to go to. Then it would be, oh, Easy's all right. That one's not so good. And then you'd work down and then 7 a.m. He's going to answer his phone, but his drugs are shit.
Yeah.
But you'd still buy it. You'll still pursue it. You'd still wait 2 hours for him to come in 10 minutes. All of that stuff.
Yes.
we would do. And that was what I was paying for. That was the bit that I kind of like. That was the bit I loved. The rest of it I didn't because I knew where it was going.
It's interesting you say about, eventually getting hold of the drug dealer, even though his drugs are actually naff. I remember there, by the grace of God, I was spared drugs, but booze, no, I was straight into that. At the end of my drinking, I had a preferred drink of choice. That was the one I liked, and I would try and rake enough money together to get a half bottle of it and try and hold it down. But if the shop had run out of that, I'd take anything.
Of course.
I'd take anything that was in the same price range. So long as it was in the same price range, I'd take it. Even if I didn't like it, that would go down my neck, or hopefully go down my neck and stay down.
Drink their mouthwash. I'd drink their perfume.
Yeah, mess.
I'd drink anything with alcohol in it. It didn't bother me.
Yeah, I had a little dalliance with white spirit once. That wasn't good.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I never thought I had a drink problem until it ran out. That was the problem.
Yeah.
Because of the job that I had and where I worked and what I did, alcohol was never an issue. There was never an issue where I had to chase it. Bring people up to get them to deliver booze.
Yeah, that was everywhere, wasn't it?
When I'd go back to my house and the first thing we'd go to a 24-hour shop in Willesden Lane and buy 2 crates and have a whip round for bottles of vodka because it was the only shop that sold it back then. Alcohol was something that went along with everything else that we did.
Yeah.
But you took one of those things away, that recipe very soon fell apart because what happened was I'd find myself in blackout. I'd find myself putting police cells because of my drinking.
Yeah.
Because I always did one to outlevel the other.
Yes. It's interesting. You're talking about your drug of choice or whatever. I mean, I did 2 or 3 stints in rehab, and I was quite surprised initially. Alcohol was the one that was my undoing at the end, Tony. But I don't know how you feel about this. You might be indifferent. But I remember sitting there with people that were on heroin or crack or whatever, and I was always quite surprised to hear them say that they felt that alcohol was the one that was what was the most deadly. Because
it's the most accessible. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Listen, food, sex, drugs, alcohol, it's how we use them will kill us.
Yeah.
Right? They're not the issue. Drugs are not the problem. Alcohol's not the problem, right? We're the fucking problem.
Yeah.
Right? We're the problem, and how we use things. I can have sushi on a Monday and it's really good. I'll have it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday until I'm sick of raw fish, until I come out in a rash from raw fish. That's how I use. So it's the same with sex. Sex addiction. When we take it to that level where we become dependent on it, it changes the way we feel. That's always the issue. But with alcohol, it's on every street corner. But when I have a lot of sponsors and I work with a lot of people, but for me, it's like I always say to them, like, especially this time, around Christmas or
Yeah.
birthdays, people have a real problem, and it's like, oh, people are going to be drinking. I'm like, and what's your problem with that? As long as you don't have a drink,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not going to get triggered. Sit with 10 people drinking, and I guarantee you don't get triggered. Because what you're doing is you'll see them, you'll think, oh my God, they all talk such shit when they're drunk. And it will actually give you the opposite effect.
Yeah.
People say to me, how can you still go to work in clubs? And I'm like, quite easily. The club's not the problem. And I think as soon as we realize, first of all, the first realization we need is we're not the party. And the second realization is that the club's not the problem.
Yeah.
We're the problem. All right. It all stems with us. And alcohol is, it's accessible, and also it's society makes it okay for you to why are you not having a drink? It's the only drug that people have a go at you for not doing.
Yeah. You're right.
It really is. It's like, why are you not drinking? Oh my God, what you're like?
Yeah.
And it's like you have to explain yourself for the fact that you're not drinking.
Yeah, if you're not drinking, just have a small one. Just have a small one. You'll be okay.
Oh
man. Yeah.
It's just it's other people's projection of because then you're okay for them. I could never have a small anything.
No.
What was that for? What is the point of that?